cannot wait for the draft. I can't. I'm so excited. And
so
then
excited?
next year it's here.
Well, I know somebody else is excited for the draft. Tim Twentyman, senior writer for DetroitLions.com. Tim, come on in and talk to us. How you been, Tim?
Hey, Tim.
Good. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
We're doing good. We're just same old, beating ourselves over 6 and 18. 6 and 18. Is it Miles Murphy? Is it Tyree Wilson? Is it this guy, Jalen Carter? Blah, blah, blah. Tim, 6 and 18, man. What are we thinking right now? What are we hearing for the Detroit Lions recently?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Brad Holmes has had 2 good drafts, obviously, his first 2 times around. And look, he's got 5 picks in the top 81. He's got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. So I think this is an interesting draft in that he's got the capital move up if he wants to. Let's say he identifies a guy he really loves. Let's say Will Anderson Jr., and you maybe want to get to 3 if 2 quarterbacks go 1 and 2. You've got the ammunition to do that. You can obviously stay at 6 and 18 and take 2 terrific players. You can move back and get assets if there's a number of guys who are similarly graded. So, I think the night's wide open for Brad Holmes. He can do a lot of different things, and I think that's really going to be the interesting part about Thursday in particular is how that's all going to shape out. Is he going to move up? Is he going to pick a 6-18? Is he going to move back? Because of what they did in free agency and what they did to help that defense particularly, I think it really just opens the door that Brad can trust his board and go a lot of different ways, which would be fun to watch.
Talking to DetroitLions.com senior writer Tim Twentyman. Tim, yesterday, 100%, yesterday, C.J. Stroud comes into the business. Now people in Detroit, why are they bringing in C.J. Stroud? What's that? He's the quarterback. What does that mean? Talk about what bringing C.J. Stroud in yesterday, because I agree with you 100%. The moves they made in the offseason so far, they put themselves in a situation where you can do a lot at 6. You can go a lot of different directions. Talk about why C.J. Stroud will be coming to Allen Park yesterday.
Well, I think you have to do your due diligence if you're Brad Holmes, right? I mean, look, they have all the confidence in the world in Jared Goff. Jared Goff is signed for 2 more years. Jared Goff is 28. I think people maybe forget about that. We're not talking about a 32-year-old quarterback, a 33-year-old quarterback. Jared Goff's 28 years old. He's got a lot of really good football ahead of him. He's their guy. But I think if you're Brad Holmes, that's such a premium position, guys. You guys know this as well as I do. And if you can secure a backup, if you can take a guy, let's say you really like a C.J. Stroud or a Hendon Hooker when we're talking about pick 18 and in the teens, or if you move back, not only is that a guy that can be your backup, maybe potentially your future, but also a guy that you can turn around and he's an asset on your football team as well. And so it's just such a premium position. I think you have to do your due diligence. When you're at the top of the draft, you have to take a look at the quarterbacks, you got to take a look at the pass rushers, and you got to take a look at the guys that protect the passer. That's just the value at the top of the draft. So Brad Holmes wouldn't be doing his job if he wasn't doing his due diligence on all those premium positions, having a pick at the top of the draft.
Hey, Tim, you've been writing some great stuff, and it's locking me in, meeting the prospects. And you did one on a kid that we like here at Woodward Sports. Matter of fact, our guy in the back, Lucas Klotz, who is our top draft guy. I mean, this kid sleeps and eats drafts. He comes in, he's like, Matt, you got to see this kid Drew Sanders. You got to see this kid Drew Sanders. And what do? You write about him. Tell me about this kid. Transfers from Alabama, goes to Arkansas, becomes a linebacker, and he's all over the field. He's a big kid. Looks like he has to still grow into his body, but he looks like something special.
Yeah, he's a really super athletic kid, a guy who can get after the quarterback. He's got terrific size, can run sideline to sideline. He's one of those guys who you can do a lot of different things with. And look, when you're Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell and this defense, you look at some of the guys they've drafted most recently, they love versatile defenders, right? A guy like Aiden Hutchinson who, can go on the edge, but then you throw that NASCAR package in when you want to put James Houston and some of those other guys in, you can slide him inside. And so with a guy like Drew, he's a guy that can come off the edge, a 3-4 type rush guy, a really terrific blitzer if you look at his sack production in college, but then also 100 tackles so he can play in space. A guy that's pretty good on third down, a guy that can stay in all three downs and be a guy that can not only blitz, rush the passer, but play in space. And I think that's what defenses are looking for in today's NFL. Guys that can do a lot of different things, play a lot of different roles, but especially play in space because that's so much part of the NFL game right now.
Tell me, actually, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you brought this up. Drew Sanders out of Arkansas. Watch the film, him, love him. Like you say, he can play in space. I love that he can move laterally. I got in some trouble What else is new? When I said something earlier this week talking about Jack Campbell, look, I understand Jack Campbell's a good linebacker, but I'm looking at the Big Ten. I'm looking at how slow he is. I'm looking at 6'5". I'm looking at he's one of the bigger linebackers. Linebackers aren't that size anymore. And if you look slow to me in the Big Ten, that has not been good over the last 2 years. I can't imagine what you're going to do in the NFL. I don't mean any disrespect to Jack Campbell, but just not at 48. When I'm thinking about all the top 10 linebackers in the league now, they've all been second, third, or fourth round picks. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting point because the way the game is, you have to be able to run and cover as a linebacker in this league, or you're a two-down player. And when I look at Jack, I see kind of a throwback kind of guy, big, strong, physical.
Brian Urlacher.
Yeah, plays north and south, not so much east and west. Though I think if you have a guy that has instincts and a guy that can diagnose things ahead of him, who's played a lot of football, who's really smart, and look, that's a smart program there at Iowa. They teach those guys fundamentals, techniques. Well, what does the guard do? That's my key. I fire here, right? And so, you can get away with being maybe a step slower if you're a really intelligent player. You can diagnose things. The interesting thing with Campbell to me is this was a Detroit Lions football team that ranked 29th in the NFL against the run. So there's a guy to me where you can get better taking him, even though maybe there's some limitations on third down or what you can do initially in the pass game. This defense has got to get better against the run, guys. So, there's a guy, a big old school thumper, north and south, can take on blocks and help you in the run game. So I think that's where the appeal is for a guy like Campbell, an old school style throwback linebacker that can help you against the run certainly right away.
Jalen Carter at 6, you don't have those problems.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim Twentyman joins us, DetroitLions.com. Yes, he gets to work with Mike O'Hara on a daily basis. Mike. God bless him. Let's keep with your prospect watch. You also went into Lucas Van Ness of Iowa, defensive lineman. Tell us a little bit about him. Will he fit here?
Yeah, again, what's the word we talked about, a little bit earlier? Versatility, right? When you got Lucas Van Ness, here's a guy who started as a defensive tackle at Iowa, then moved to the edge, and that's when you saw a lot of success. People get wrapped up in, well, he didn't start at Iowa. Well, that's a program where he had 2 senior guys ahead of him. But if you look at the snaps, if you look at the reps, it was right there on par with those guys. They really rotated him in. And again, he reminds me of Aiden Hutchinson a little bit, just in the sense 6'5", 272 pounds. But guys, look at at the combine. Here's a guy who ran 4.58 at 6'5", 278 pounds. So, a guy that's athletic, versatile, again, can play inside, outside. I think you saw when you throw the film on him, you see a lot of the bull rush, heavy hands, that kind of stuff. I think there's a really huge ceiling for him. As soon as you increase that toolbox of pass rush moves and counters, he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got the versatility. He's a guy whose motor never quits. Now you give him a little bit more of a skill set in terms of a pass rush. I think he could certainly be a fit in this scheme opposite Aiden Hutchinson. That could be a pretty nice duo of size, athleticism, and guys that fit and have some versatility.
That's, of course, if they don't take Jalen at number 6, if he doesn't slip, because if he slips to them, there's no Lucas Van Ness. We're not talking about that. And they reached down and they built themselves a hell of a secondary. They brought 3 guys in. They left Jeff Okudah go to Atlanta. You also wrote about a kid from Alabama, Brian Branch. What about him?
Yeah, again, we talk about, that's the word, versatility. These are the guys that the Detroit Lions love. These are the guys that Aaron Glenn's love. Look, Braylon will know too. The NFL, 70% of defense is sub packages now in the NFL.
Yeah,
I mean, you're in the nickel 70% of the time, over 70% of the time. You're not in that 4-3-3-4 base. And so, guys that can play safety, guys that can come down and play the nickel, which he did at Alabama at a very high level. And so, again, guys that you can put in different packages, you can roll and do different things with them. I think those are the guys, at least to me, that are really appealing, that you can set up packages and really counter what some of these offenses are doing with some certain nickel packages. When you put 5-6 guys in, you can play the dime, do a lot of different things there. I think step in, play a hybrid linebacker role. Again, just guys that can do multiple things are the most appealing, at least to me, in this draft.
what's going on? Hey, look, I'm a wide receiver. I like touchdowns. I like receptions. So, at some point I'm going to ask about wide receivers, tight ends. Chad's in town. Randomly, Chad's never here, and he's asking about wide receivers, and so am I. Quentin Johnson is a guy that keeps coming up at 18. I see Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. He keeps coming up at 55. Laporta, speaking of Iowa players, Laporta tight end keeps coming up at 55 as well. So what do you think about the Lions? Marvin Jones Sr., 1-year deal. You're not looking for the most with him. You're looking for a guy to draft. What do you think about wide receivers and tight end?
Well, let's start with the wide receivers. To me, when I look at the wide receivers now, I think we've been spoiled in years past with some of the top-end talent at wide receiver in these draft classes, and just how deep and talented the wide receiver classes have been. That is not the case this year.
No.
There's some really good guys. You mentioned Quentin Johnson. I think really when you're talking about the guys that the Lions would be interested, it's that X spot, right? It's that DJ Chark role. Guy with size, can get down the field, 50-50 balls. I think that's where Marv's going to help them. But you mentioned it. He's on a 1-year deal. He's 33 years old. So guys like Quentin Johnson, 6'4", over 215, 220 pounds, terrific run after the catch.
Yeah.
But guys that can play that X and give you something vertically. Now, obviously, J-Mo is going to mix into that spot too, and we all know he can give you something vertically. But a guy that can, in the intermediate, deep routes, 50-50 ball size, I think that's the one thing maybe they're missing. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, one of the best slot receivers, if not one of the best wide receivers in the league.
He's getting there. He's definitely getting there.
Yeah, now you just need that guy with some size, 50-50 balls, and I think then you round out your wide receiver class. When we flip over to the tight ends, this is the best tight end class in probably a decade, guys. There are going to be guys in the third round of this draft,
Kincaid,
that are going to come in, start right away, and be contributors. And so I think at 18, both those second-round picks, I think you're going to be able to find a tight end. There's a ton of them. You just go down the list. I think there's at least 11 guys with a day 2 grade in this draft. And so if you don't like the Mayers or the Kincaids at 18, you can wait till day 2 and get a really, really good one. I'm not worried about tight end. Teams are going to find a lot of really good tight ends in this class.
Tim, I'm going to put you on the spot here now. Number 6 and number 18, if the Lions hold serve and pick, who are you taking?
Guys, at 6, I think a guy who's going to be there who I really like is Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. A guy with size.
Maz loathes Tyree. He doesn't love Tyree. I won't disrespect Tyree. He loves the idea.
I just don't know
Tyree.
about him. I just hear him. All of a sudden, he's the name. Just like last year when the Jags when they went for Trayvon Walker. I just hear his name, and I don't know. It just gives me the shivers.
Yeah, you got to watch the film on him, really, because it's been 2 years of production. It's not like he was a flash in the pan this year. You go back, double-digit tackles for loss each of the last 2 years, 14 sacks combined the last 2 years. Size, 6'6", 270, long arms. When you have Aiden on that side, and Tyree's a guy who's really good against the run too, right? We talked about it a little bit earlier. This team's got to be much better against the run. So now you've got size and length and guys that are tenacious on the outside. And so I like 2 guys like that. Length, I think the ceiling's really high for him. I just think he's one of those guys that fits this defense with his versatility again. And look, at 18, I know what people say about taking a running back. You don't do it in the first round. I don't care. I think at 6, it's the best defensive player that's on my board. And at 18, it's the best player that's on my board, no matter of position. And I think if Bijan Robinson is there at 18, I do not care. You watch the film on him, 258 carries last year, guys, 104 missed tackles of those carries. He runs low to the ground. He's the best wide receiver from the running back position I've seen since I've probably been doing this job. He's that good. You can put him in the slot. And then he's just powerful, productive. He was one of the favorite guys I talked to at the combine since I've been doing this since 2009. Really, really smart guy, all about ball. I think it's a luxury pick a little bit, but look, Swift is on the last year of his contract, and so you're going to be looking to the future of that position, someone to pair with David Montgomery. And I think at 18, he's going to have a top 5 grade, and I think teams are just going to say, I can't take that running back. I can't take that running back. And when it clicks to 18, I think he is by far and away going to be the number 1 guy on Brad Holmes' board if he's still there at 18. And so if I trust my board and I'm talking about taking talented football players and the best guys on my draft board, I think Bijan Robinson at 18 fits.
I definitely agree with you with Bijan Robinson. Luckily, we saw a mock draft yesterday that had the Tennessee Titans moving up to 6. By the way, that's Chad. Chad said hello.
What's up, Chad? How you doing, buddy?
They had the Detroit Lions swapping from 6 to 12. Tennessee swapping picks, and if they're at 12, please believe they will be taking Bijan Robinson at 12. I agree with you on Bijan Robinson, the worth at 18. Only thing I'll disagree with Tim Twentyman on. If that 6 Jalen Carter's there and Tyree Wilson is there and they draft Tyree Wilson,
no,
I won't be here for it. I will not be here for it. I think Tyree Wilson, I think he gets you an extra playoff win. I think Jalen Carter gets you to the Super Bowl.
No, and I agree. And look, it's the biggest position of need too, right,
Yeah.
guys? I mean, going into the draft, they've got to add some talent and depth to that defensive tackle position. But to me, the off the field stuff is one thing. With Brad and his team and those guys, they're going to vet that. But the thing that concerns me, and I think it might concern a head coach like Dan Campbell or a guy like Brad, is this guy all about ball? Because you look at the guys that they draft, you look at the guys that they re-sign, you look at the guys that they move on from, the guys that are here are all about ball. And that's just a Dan Campbell prerequisite. So, look, if they feel good about that, look, the player I love, he plays 30 pounds lighter than he is, and he's a big physical guy. He's got a great first step. He will help you. But is he all about ball? And if he's not, I just don't know if he's a fit here. So that's what Brad Holmes and his guys had to vet. If they feel good about it, look, Brad's got a track record the last 2 years of drafting, of having terrific drafts and getting quality guys that are all about ball, the Amon-Ra St. Browns, the Penei Sewells, right? These guys. And so if Brad trusts that and takes him, then we all should too. But that's going to be my question mark is Jalen Carter all about ball? Is he going to be a culture fit here?
Tim, before I let you go, I got to say this. 2 years ago, national championship game, Lewis Seen was in that game. Trayvon Walker was in that game. Jordan Davis was in that game. Jacoby Dean was in that game. George Pickens was in that game. Jalen Carter was the best player on the field. And then he did it again last year in national championship. So he's all about ball because he's got 2 rings to back it up at Kirby Smart U. Tim Twentyman, always a pleasure to have you on.
We got 20.
Chad wants to ask a question now. Okay. Go ahead, Chad. It's on you.
That's one question since y'all got him.
It's on you, brother.
20 man, what's up, bud?
What up, Chad? How you doing, man?
Good to see you. Okay, so serious question. How surprised would you be if you seen the Detroit Lions take a quarterback in the first round? How surprised would you be if you actually see Brad Holmes go after one of these quarterbacks that may fall to number 6 or 18 maybe? You know how the draft goes. You never know how things could fall.
Yeah, Chad, I would be a little bit surprised if it was at 6 because I just think you're in such a win now mode with the Detroit Lions, with what's happening around the division. I think if you're the Detroit Lions, if you're sitting there, you got to say, wow, I've got a great shot with the team I've assembled, with how I'm going to get better in the draft, that I can challenge for the NFC North in 2023. And a quarterback doesn't help me take a step to do that. It might in the future, but it doesn't help me next year because Jared Goff's going to be the guy. Now, Chad, when we go back to 18, or if the team moves back a little bit, I'm all for it. Like I said before, I think it's the best defensive player on your board at 6. That's the way you take a step forward. That's how you help a weak part of your football team and you take the next step. Now at 18, and I told those guys earlier, it's the best player on my board. I don't start reaching at 18. I trust my board. It's the top guy. And if a Hendon Hooker, if one of those quarterbacks is that top guy, I think at 18, that to me is more in play. Certainly the second round is in play, the third round. You've got to improve the depth at the quarterback position behind Jared Goff. Obviously, we know the reports of a contract offer out to Teddy Bridgewater. We got to see what he decides. But they've got to add to that position just in case, too. And so I could see them doing it with a young guy. But Chad, I'd really be surprised if it's at 6. I think we're talking about 18, 48, 55. That, I think, is more reasonable if that guy is far and away the top player on my board.
Hey, Tim, Chad's question now leads me to another question. It's been talked that at Arizona with the third pick, they've been talked to by a bunch of teams. They've been approached by a bunch of teams, Detroit Lions, one of them. If the Lions move up on draft day to pick 3, the Arizona Cardinals spot, who are they going after? Because if they move up to 3, I guarantee you know who they're going after.
Yeah, it's Will Anderson Jr. It's got to be, at least to me.
Okay.
It's got to be to me because then you walk away, guys, with having drafted the best pass rusher in 2 consecutive drafts, you've now set up the edge of your defense with 2 young, talented edge rushers that are versatile, that you got under contract for the next 4 or 5 years. You don't even need to worry about one of the most important positions in the NFL. So to me, I think if you're moving up, Will Anderson Jr. is by far and away the highest player on your board, and you've got the assets if you're Brad Holmes to go up and try to make a play for him, and I think it's a great move.
You heard it from Tim Twentyman, Detroit Lions.com.
I'm not trading anything. I'm just taking Carter at 6 and calling it a day.
It was just a question. Like I want to know, like, if they're moving up, what was the pick they're thinking about?
Or ask 20 men, what if they move back and they don't take the 6th pick? What if they give up the 6th pick and they, pick up more draft picks and maybe go to 10, DB 18, and whatever?
If they move back, it's a DB.
What do you think they do if they go back?
Because then obviously at that point you've got a number of different guys with the same grade, and so now you're trusting your board. You can pick up an asset. You can say, hey, there's a group of 5-6 guys that I have very similarly graded that I feel good about taking at that spot. I think one position, guys that would be interesting is cornerback. You look at what they did in free agency. They did get C.J. Gardner-Johnson on a 1-year deal. They did get Emmanuel Mosley on a 1-year deal. They did re-sign Will Harris on a 1-year deal. They traded away Jeff Okudah, right? So really, after next year, you've got Jerry Jacobs and Cam Sutton under contract. So I think if they move back, and maybe even at 6, if the grade determine, if one of those corners is by far and away the best guy. But I think if you move back, that's certainly more in play with one of those top 3 guys, a Christian Rodriguez, Devin Witherspoon, or Jory Porter Jr. I think it's certainly in play for one of those top cornerbacks there if you move back a little bit, because that is, even though you've got it under wraps for this year, it's going to be a need in the future because a lot of those guys are on 1-year deals.
Any more questions? I'm going to have to put the man on the payroll. Tim Twentyman, it's been a pleasure and an honor as always. Appreciate your insight. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, guys. Have a good one. See you later, Chad.
Take care, bud.
Appreciate you guys, man. Hey, look.